Only 1 minute late this time. All right, let me know if you guys can hear me and how it sounds. Fingers crossed we don't get screwed at the beginning of this live stream, right? Okay. Man, that chat's moving fast. I'm going to ask you guys, calm down. I may limit the chat if you spam it too much. Don't abuse it. Let's just get right into it, shall we? There's a reason I didn't do a live stream during the show, and it's pretty simple. When I watch something, like, frankly, the example I gave within my Discord is like when there was an E3 live stream, right? I don't want to sit there and watch a panel of IGN writers tell me what I'm supposed to think about what I'm seeing. I want to sit there, watch it, and let it soak in. And I'm glad I did, because there are some pretty big misconceptions in those slides that I'm seeing people share. And it was actually a really fun conversation with the people in my Discord, wading through some of the BS. And at this point, I think it's safe to say I've formed my opinion about what's going on, about everything I wanted to say. There were actually not that many surprises, although the surprises there were pretty big ones, frankly. But there's going to be a lot more. I have a lot more I'm digging into with regards to what actual node this is using. I know people are going to spam, no, it's 8 nanometer. I don't think it's that simple, guys. There's a lot more going on in the behind the scenes with availability, the node it's using, actual performance, not marketing. But that's going to take time. And I've formed my opinion about what I think now. And so let's get this out there, right? I didn't want to take the time to put together this video. And I think there will be a lot of open questions. So let me get through the things I need to say first, much like loose ends, before you send any tips for questions or ask me to pay attention to the chat, frankly, because there are some big things I think people missed that I need to get to. All right. So first of all, let's see, and I will be putting timestamps. Just right away, I want to start talking about kind of the presentation itself, like the opening from Jensen's kitchen, as a lot of people thought. I guess some people thought maybe he'd be in his pajamas in his bedroom, but I think this is the standard for Jensen Wang unveilings for now. And just like, let's think about what they talked about in the beginning. Fortnite getting ray tracing, improvements to latency, which would also help esports players. Additionally, tons and tons and tons of basically bolstering the software they've already been talking about, whether that's giving more reasons for you to need to buy their G-Sync DRM module and monitors, or what all of the different AI uses. And the AI uses was a big deal. I think one that gamers will gloss over. But when they were showing that they have a way to utilize Ampere's architecture to kind of do machine learning with, like, I don't know, mouths moving in games, that's a big deal. Developers I talk to, whether it's in gaming, quantum, AI, machine learning, all of that type of stuff, as you guys will know if you listen to all of the Broken Silicons, they say NVIDIA's software stack, when it just comes to anything related to machine learning acceleration, is far and above AMD. Now, I've heard RDNA 2 will improve on that, but there's a reason they emphasize that, and it's because I really think this can allow NVIDIA to corner a lot of indie devs. If you're someone like I guess you might not say Bannerlord, right? The people who make Mountain Blade are quite indie devs, but they're way smaller than usual. And the ability to have a software stack where where NVIDIA can assist in any way in moving mouths correctly when people are talking, that type of stuff is huge. Indie devs don't have time to program that stuff, and that's why they showed that. And it's because Ampere is clearly not just a gaming architecture. Again, like I've reported in all of my Ampere leaks, this assumption that Ampere will just be like a node shrink of Turing with like professional components stripped out. No. Ampere, including below the A100, is clearly a professional graphics card again, except it looks like it'll be very good at gaming. I mean, Turing was, of course, good at gaming for the time, but it was clearly more of a professional card. This is truly just, an insane professional lineup that's also through brute force gaming. In many ways, and you can quote me on this, I would say that Nvidia Ampere almost looks like if Vega didn't suck. Like a shit ton of teraflops, a shit ton of shaders, but it actually performs well in games relative to the power usage. Maybe. And I'm going to get to that near the end of my notes here because I do have things to say about RDNA 2 that may surprise some people. Some people will say this is a hot take, but we'll get to that. Anyways, let's just continue with the rest of the things I saw in the presentation. If you guys will notice, there are links in the description of this video. There's a few things you'll note of my links. One of the links is, of course, to a 400-watt graphics card, which is exactly what I was told by AIBs, that the premium models are going to use 400 watts. So, again, confirming what I've reported, they're going to use a shit ton of energy. I'm sure some of the 3090s will be fine with just 2 8-pins, but I would want the 12-pin myself, or or 3 8-pins. I don't know why you'd want to hold this back. If you're getting a 3090, you can afford a PC that uses 1,000 watts overall, right? So I just wouldn't risk that myself. But one thing that's interesting, though, and was inconsistent, is on their website it says 2 8-pins, despite showing a 12-pin in the marketing. And there's a link in the description. Let me put a timestamp for this as well. Seriously, guys, Asus just put out a press release that says 5,248 Cuda cores, half of what Nvidia said. So that's something where I wasn't sure if I should dig into it more before doing a video, and I came to the conclusion that I should just do a live stream and then a more focused video in like a week or so once I know everything I can about Ampere. But there's something inconsistent about the 8-pins listed, about the performance graphs, about the Cuda core count. Maybe it's a mistake, but I'm just saying, if you've got a link to another press release that shows Cuda core counts from someone, put it in the live chat, guys, because I was looking for it. If you go to MSI's website, at least when I checked, MSI's website, Asus's website, doesn't list Cuda core count, but the press release said half as many as Nvidia. So, as Nvidia stated, and guys, I understand why it would be twice as many Cuda cores. It would be because they doubled Cuda cores per SM. I'm aware of that. You don't need to tell me that, guys. Duh. But at the same time, why is Asus's marketing today showing half that? I don't know. It's weird. And what this tells me, and I'm going to keep going on with this, is something feels rushed about Ampere. Because, and I'm not hating, I'm just giving you my honest impression. They show mind-bendingly good performance, but where are the charts? Because what I saw at Digital Foundry, which, again, link in the description, is really impressive. They showed really impressive performance, but why not show those charts even a little bit in the actual presentation? Why, when Digital Foundry showed a demonstration of Battlefield 5, was ray tracing not turned on? That makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, they showed ray tracing on in some games at Digital Foundry and off in others. Why? That tells me the drivers aren't entirely done yet. So this goes hand in hand with what I've been told, that the 3090 availability is going to be like almost zero. Think Radeon 7 numbers at launch. Like, I'm talking tiny. And that I think there will be decent availability of the 3080, but it's like, if you thought the 2080 Ti was hard to get at launch, think of getting the 3080 as a little easier than the 2080 Ti around launch. There's way less volume. And a lot of that has to do with Samsung, based on what I'm told, is that Samsung's yields are just not very good. So yeah, that brings me right to the 8-nanometer node discussion. Another thing here I want to touch on. So this morning, I had multiple AIBs saying it was 7-nanometer. And I mean this. I talked to, you can guess which tech tubers that review graphics cards I talked to. They had marketing materials that said 7-nanometer this morning. So it is my opinion that the 8-nanometer thing is kind of a last-minute decision due to marketing. And it kind of has to be, because Samsung 7-nanometer, based on what I'm told, is around, which is really a partial EUV node, is around like 80%, but that's probably 80% with smartphones, APUs, not with giant dies. I have no clue what the yield rate was of these giant dies. So my guess is they have some kind of, I don't know, if there's extra EUV layers, less. When they say custom 8 nanometer, I think they were considering calling it 7 nanometer. And at the last minute, they decided no. And they decided no because, I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to be as good as TSMC's 7 nanometer. It's just not going to. Look at this power usage. It's absurd. So that's why. Also, as the node, as Samsung improves their 5 nanometer node, which is really more comparable to TSMC's 7 nanometer EUV on paper. God knows it's not even as good on paper. I mean, that's just on paper too. God knows in practice it won't be as good. I think Nvidia wants the ability to market Samsung 7 nanometer later, and they don't want to launch cards on a node that's clearly worse than TSMC 7. So this allows them to kind of be more honest. And additionally, it allows them to do a refresh that they can call 7 nanometer, which is really just Samsung fixing their 7 nanometer node. And that's why they're calling this 8 nanometer. It's probably been adjusted to work with larger die sizes. That's what TSMC's 12 nanometer was, by the way. It was capable of being more dense than their 16 nanometer. But TSMC's 12 nanometer was also tweaked to get okay yields on mega die sizes. And that's what I think is going on with the 8 nanometer. But again, I can't say this enough. This morning, there were AIBs saying half the Cuda Core count in 7 nanometer. And some of those press releases were official, or at least they were going to be before they had to pull them. So there was some last minute marketing decision changes. And it kind of lines up with the, again, why was Battlefield 5 not shown with ray tracing on Digital Foundry? That's really weird to me. And I think they're rushing this out. I don't think there's going to be a lot of availability. I think availability will be fine by Q1, maybe. But that's all I'm saying is if you can get your hands on a 3080 or a 3090 and you really want one, I would say do it if you see it, because there's not a lot of them. There just isn't. Okay. And I'll get to RDNA in a second in my notes here. But based on what I'm told, RDNA is launching technically later. But I wouldn't be so surprised if when RDNA 2 launched, it was easier to get a hold of. So, all right. Anyways, let me move on then to a few more things. So, oh yeah, let me put this down as a timestamp too. So we're at about 13 minutes. So one thing I want to point out is RTX I. That is literally exactly what I was describing with NVCache. Dynamically using tensor cores to accelerate memory and storage together dynamically between RAM, the graphics card, and your SSD. I described this in May. So to me, what I've learned today is those initial sources I had, even though, not everything comes out in the end, were legit for sure. No one else was talking about NVCache. No one else was talking about I/O. And I legitimately do think there's a chance they change the name because they don't want the same name as a leak, frankly. And also because I do think RTX I/O goes hand in hand with the console people arguing about I/O performance. I really do. When it comes to tensor memory compression, they kind of referenced it when they were talking about RTX I/O. The decompression, inside like that's what I was talking about, guys. So it's very vindicating to see that was true, but there's still just a lot of questions, and I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say. Those I explained in my last video. I really encourage people watch it, why they were getting higher clock speeds and lower power usage on early samples. It's because, the early samples were basically the only perfectly working ones for software development. But when you get closer to a launch, you tweak the final architecture for higher yields and you just make do with more power usage. I think that's why you see so many leaks, whether it's Zen 2 5 gigahertz, not really pan out. And I think that's just a good lesson. So check out that video. And again, guys, Samsung 7 nanometer, Samsung 8 nanometer, it's all Samsung's almost latest node. I guess the most vindicating thing about these leaks about Ampere is nobody got everything right. Ampere has been a quagmire. compared to previous launches. Although I guess you could argue we know more about it than we did about previous NVIDIA stuff. And so that's NVCache. And finally, I want to have a pretty big discussion about pricing. So this morning, I tweeted that I expect the pricing on Ampere to be very divisive, because there's going to be, I really expect this, because I had a very long, like multi-hour text discussion with people in the Discord. Again, you support me on Patreon, you can get in the Discord and like put all these comments and questions for free, guys. We talked about it back and forth, and at first I was like $800 for the 3080, but eventually I came to the conclusion it might just be 700. And I snapshotted it, so I can prove it if I need to. But the point is this: over time, I realized, and again, I want to reiterate this, NVIDIA doesn't want to do a super refresh unless they need to. They may launch some TIs, but they think customers are confused with the TIs and the supers. What they want to do, I am told, from this point forward, is be aggressive and hold firm in their specs and just have a lineup that's good from the start, and they don't need to change. And I think that's a good strategy. And I think that's why you're seeing this so aggressive. When it comes to like a super or a TI refresh, I think more likely what you're going to get is something like an RTX 3080 with maybe faster GDR6 and slightly more SMs enabled if Big Navi is a threat. That's what they'll do. And to the people that say there's going to be a 3080 Ti, you guys, it's called a 3090 12 gigabyte. They don't need to invent a 3080 Ti. They can just release a 12 gigabyte version of the 3090 and give it faster memory. There you go. That's their counter to Big Navi. And I think that's what they're more likely to do instead of releasing a 3080 Ti or some super. Again, a super was like a last minute thing to like respond to AMD. They're not like proud of that naming scheme, guys. It's a preposterously stupid name. I don't know why I've heard rumors of why they did that, but they're pretty silly. Anyways, I do want to continue to talk about the divisiveness on the pricing. So I just want to put things in perspective. And again, links in the description to an inflation calculator. Yes, a 3070 for $500 doesn't sound that great if you're like, oh, the 970 was 380. The Pascal one was under 500. Yeah, but Pascal was a highly cut down, 104 die. This is way more impressive, guys. This is, as far as I can tell, almost the full die of 104, and they're selling it for 500. This is pretty close to Kepler pricing for the GTX 680 from 8 years ago. 8 years ago. I know it's called a 70. I know they're selling it for 500, but it's almost full GA 104 for 500. 500. They charged 800 for this equivalent thing with Turing. They're being way more aggressive this time. Okay? They just are. And if you adjust for inflation, the 680 was $560 and $564 based on what I have here in today's money. So again, I don't know. They're launching the 3080 for the same price they launched the 1080, except this time it's the top die cut down and not the second tier die. They are being way more aggressive this year. Way more aggressive. So I just want to put that in perspective. The only reason I think people are going to be divisive about this is that the consoles are coming out and they're going to be cheaper. And AMD is going to come out with something that probably uses less energy and at least offers decent performance for less money. Any other year, this would be people going, wow, NVIDIA's going aggressive. But the fact is, NVIDIA's got competition this year. And I think that is why it's so divisive. And again, yes, the 3090 is $1,500, but I'm just giving you my honest opinion here. I think NVIDIA made the right choice by just marking up the what would have been the 3080 Ti, the 3090, giving it more RAM like a Titan. And the people that always want to buy the almost best card, just sell it for $1,500. They'll pay whatever the hell you ask for some reason. And then for everyone else, we can have reasonable pricing. It could be cheaper, I admit, but this is more aggressive than Nvidia's been in almost a decade. Almost a decade. So let's just at least admit they're being more aggressive than they've been in almost a decade. I don't want to hear it, guys. You know, and so outside of that, all I can say is when I look at the performance, yeah, I don't know why Nvidia is trying to claim the 3080 is twice as strong as the 2080. Like, if you go to Digital Foundries, clearly paid for, marketing for Nvidia, they show it's more like 70%. And I've seen a lot of people go 70% better. That's insane. And it's like, pull out a calculator. Pull out a calculator. It's relative to the 2080. So if the 2080 Ti is 35% better, let's say, right, than the 2080. So you do 1.35 and then you multiply it by 1.27, which is what I always said. The 3080 is going to be like 15 to like 30% better, depending on how good it is, how much of the die it is, which it's a bit more of the die. No, it's actually exactly as much of the die as I expected. If you do that, you get 71%, right? 27% better than a 2080 Ti, 71% better than a 2080. What we're seeing is exactly what's been reported. And yes, I believe the 3090 will be about 20% better than that. That's it. That's it then. What I reported since May, 50% better than the 2080 Ti. At least I can see overclocked models getting to 60%. You know, and what I will say is I know some of the early samples hit over 2.2 gigahertz. So I'm not saying everyone's going to be able to do that, but I think if you have a if you have an insane power supply and you're willing to push the card to like over 400 watts, I do think you could get this thing to be like pretty crazy. I think these will be decent overclockers. They're just going to pull a shit ton of energy. And I guess the last thing I'll say about performance is they kind of hid the, I think, right? They kind of hid the ray tracing performance a little bit, didn't they? And, you know, I think that's on purpose. I think that's their ace in the hole, right? I think everyone right now is expecting these cards to be roughly, let's say 50% better than Turing, but double what you would get. Yeah, double the ray tracing because they're 50% better and the ray tracing is a bit better. I wouldn't rule out the ray tracing being over twice as good as before, which frankly, I think we should expect at this point. For ray tracing to become mainstream, you should be able to turn it on and use it. Shouldn't be this massive performance loss. I mean, I laughed when Digital Foundry said the 2080 Ti was the first true 4K 60 ray tracing card. Yeah, no, it fucking wasn't. Okay. It was the first 1440p 40 frames per second ray tracing card. Nice try. I mean, eventually, when they nerfed ray tracing in half the games, the 2080 Ti did 4K 60 with DLSS or something. But no, that was not a true 4K 60 ray tracing card. But I think we have it. I think we will have it in the 3090. It's just, again, I know the exact numbers for the 3090's launch now from two sources, actually, and it's very small numbers. So just if you can get a 3090 and you really want one, I guess get it, because it's not going to be easy to get. Okay, and that is all I had to say about performance. And then finally, you know, I actually have heard the 3080 20 gigabyte may never come out, so I'll just say that now. But I wouldn't double down on that. You know, we'll see. And the final thing I can say is, and again, you know, I understand there's going to be some people that take this as a hot take, but it is what it is. It's what I've heard. I do not think you should rule out RDNA 2. I want you guys to just take a second and think about what NVIDIA's actually showed, because I really think people are being wowed by the crazy Cuda Core count, which some people are disputing, by the way, and the admittedly impressive marketing. You know, goddamn, is Jensen Huang a salesman? He is such a salesman. AMD needs to learn from him. My God. But, you know, what's his name? I think it's Herkelman or Herkman on Twitter. I think chief of Radeon marketing did a pretty sly tweet, if you look it up, where he basically inferred he thinks RDNA 2 is going to be more competitive than a lot of people are expecting. And that's all I can say is I've heard the same thing. So actually look at what Nvidia showed. Yes, I know there were giant Cuda Core counts. Yes, I know their slides overhyped their performance. But what do we really know? The 3080 is about 25% better than the 2080 Ti, exactly like we've been saying for months. So really what they showed, forget the node, forget the specs. What matters is final performance. What they showed is what we expected, which means what I've said about RDNA 2, I remain unwavering. I think it's going to be more impressive than people think. But it is hard to believe they'll take any performance crown. It's just unlikely, right? I think. But I just don't rule out. It sounds like RDNA 2 is going to be more efficient, and there's room for some 3070 killers and 3080 competitors. That's really all I can say. Yes, I have some exact numbers right now, but why would I say them until I'm sure? I think that'd be ridiculous. So let's just leave it at that. And I do believe we should expect RDNA 2 leaks pretty soon. I mean, everyone knows they've been tight-lipped for a reason. They want Nvidia to show at least mostly everything, and then they'll start teasing stuff to dissuade buyers. As far as I'm aware, I'll let you guys know this. I've been told that RDNA 2's driver readiness is basically in the same stage as RDNA 1's was in late June. Meaning, if they really wanted to, they could probably do a paper launch in September. However, do you really want that? Do you really want AMD to also rush out a launch that has broken like Radeon Wattman, like RDNA 1's launch? I don't think so. I think AMD wants their drivers to be extra polished this time. They want a decent amount of stock so that they can actually take market share if it's impressive when it comes out. And so I think really what you can expect is RDNA 2 to be leaked within a couple weeks, to be teased maybe in early October, maybe a paper launch end of October, but it really sounds like November is the launch date for biggest Navi, and there could even be a Navi 22 launching around the same time that can compete with the 3070 just fine, guys. And again, as you guys have known, I've said in one of my videos, I've been told professional cards should be ready in December and January. So at least by December, you'll have these cards out, and I believe availability won't be as bad. Could be wrong, though. I haven't really heard any production numbers on RDNA 2, so I don't know that they're in production yet. So what I know is TSMC has better yields, and they tend to ramp more consistently from what I've talked to with an analyst the other day. But, you know, if they haven't started producing them yet, I don't know if availability will be any better than Nvidia in practice this fall. I just suspect it will become better by Q1. Not sure, though. We're just going to have to see. And so that's what I know about RDNA 2. But just remember, RDNA 2 is going to be built on a node that is superior to what NVIDIA has, with maybe not as big of a die size, but pretty big. Pretty big. There's no reason it shouldn't be competitive if AMD is putting the focus they should be into their Radeon group. And that gets me to the final thing I want to talk about before we get into Q&A. And that is talking about, let me write down a timestamp here. So I want, and it's in the title, I believe. I want to talk about short-term advantages NVIDIA has and long-term problems. Because talking with an analyst last night about capacity, NVIDIA, if you look at their financials, wants to massively increase production next year, or how many cards they're shipping per quarter. They kind of have to justify their stock price. Guys, that means they just can't use TSMC. They can't. I know we all were speculating maybe the top cards would be at TSMC, blah, blah, blah. But it turns out they're not. And it's because they can't. They can't. There's no capacity. AMD's bought it up. AMD's buying up more of it in the future. Yes, NVIDIA will continue to use TSMC here and there. But I'm just saying, guys, NVIDIA basically is forced to use Samsung. And right now, I'm sure they're getting a sweetheart deal from Samsung. Like I've even heard they bullied Samsung into, instead of paying per wafer, they're paying per working die, which I can believe Samsung would give them that. That's not how things work at TSMC. TSMC says you figure it out. You just get, 95% yields or whatever of this wafer. That's all we can promise you. Now, of course, they'll work with you at TSMC to get you accurate estimates of what that means. But I believe Samsung's giving Nvidia, I've told the wafers at Samsung are at least 30% cheaper. And actually, if they're getting a 30% cheaper price and it's a sweetheart deal that's only paying for working dies, I could see Nvidia paying almost half as much per wafer as at TSMC, at least a third less. And so they'll make more profit, but they are using a worse node. And from the sounds of it, AMD's only getting closer to TSMC. So the long-term problem I'm seeing right now with Nvidia is I don't see Samsung catching up to TSMC anytime soon. Right now they're basically half a node behind at best. We'll call it half a node behind with way worse yields. When Samsung gets to like 5, I mean, they say they have 5 nanometer, they really don't. When Samsung gets to 5 nanometer in reality, right? In reality, like mid next year, TSMC will have been producing 5 nanometer chips since Q1 at 90% yields. By the time Samsung has good 5 nanometer yields, probably by the end of next year, and when I say good, I just mean not terrible, TSMC will be launching 4 nanometer products, just about. So this is a question where you almost wonder if you could see Nvidia cornered in a way Intel was a little bit, but because they're forced to use Samsung, right? That's what I'm saying is, in many ways, assuming RDNA 2 isn't another AM delusional failure, let's hope it's not. Assuming RDNA 2 is more efficient than than Ampere, I kind of see Ampere as the 9900K versus the 2700X. It's like, yeah, it is better by like 20%, but it also uses like 50% more energy and costs twice as much. And what's going to happen when AMD gets out their next generation on a newer node and they're still forced to use this backwards Samsung node? It's just food for thought. It's something to pay attention to because, I mean, I know Nvidia, announced they bought up a bunch of 5 nanometer wafers, but with the capacity they need, they did not buy up as much, I believe, as AMD on 5 nanometer, and they want to sell like double the chips. So that's just a disadvantage for Nvidia moving forward if they're really tethered to Samsung. Having said that, here's the good news. That could be good as much as it could be a medium-term to long-term problem for Nvidia. And it could be a long-term benefit to the industry because you do not want TSMC dominating this industry unchallenged for the next decade. If that happens, the second AMD gets to RDNA 3, like let's say RDNA 3 is on 5 nanometer and the best Nvidia can do is launch a 7 nanometer Hopper on Samsung, AMD could just win by default. And then what do you think TSMC is going to do? Raise the prices, AMD. That's what they'll say. We want more money. They'll tell AMD to jack up RDNA 3 prices if they're more efficient, have a performance lab. And propping up is probably a strong way to put it, but propping up Samsung from Nvidia can help the industry long term because we need competition. And I'm just so worried that right now TSMC's benefit is awesome. It's awesome. We're challenging Intel. Nvidia might, be matched, but long term, you do not want AMD turning into, I mean, what would they turn into? They could turn into a combination of Nvidia and Intel, dominating both Intel and Nvidia back and forth with no mercy because they have 2 nodes ahead of the competition in 2 markets. You don't want that. So hopefully this will be a long-term benefit to the industry because Nvidia is giving Samsung a lot of funding. I hope. That's the one thing I want to say. And besides that, let me think, is there really anything else to say? Besides that, I also thought it was odd. There was kind of a mix of DLSS not on or on. I don't know. From what I'm told, DLS 3.0 should be really impressive, but maybe it's not ready yet, and the driver is just like ray tracing. Again, this feels like a bit of a rush launch. It's about all I have to say about my notes. All of these things I'm investigating in the background. There's a lot more to this whole node story, I think, and other things. Make sure I actually have a source here. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Nothing new from him. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Let me get into the live Q&A. Put down a timestamp. Q&A. All right, here we are. This is the live Q&A. I saw Carl Wolf say something here a while ago. Let me see if I can get to that question. Did it disappear? It disappeared right when I moved the screen. I'm sorry, man. Game over again. So Dame Dom Pletveric. Hope I said your name right. I can almost assure you I didn't say your name right. You ask here. So Dame says 10,000 cores for the 3090. AMD is max 128 CU. Game over for AMD. Guys. Specs are specs. Performance is what matters, though. What we know from looking at Digital Foundry's 3080 video, paid for by Nvidia, still shows the 3080 is about, so we say 70% better than the 2080. What does that mean? Well, it's about 20 to 30% better than the 2080 Ti as we expected. So if, there's like 20% more cores in the 3090 and admittedly about 20% more bandwidth, I think that's what you're going to see. The 3090, 15 to 25% better, probably closer to the 15, probably like an 18% better than the 3080. So you can say it has as many cores as you want. What I've been saying is the top Ampere will be 50% better than the 2080 Ti, 70% in some games. What we have is that. It could be 100,000 cores. What we know is the performance is exactly what was rumored. So I see no reason so far why we should assume AMD can't be at least, again, and I could be wrong. I'll admit I'm wrong if I am. I see no reason why the top Navi cannot be 20 to 40% better than a 2080 Ti. I don't think that's going to beat the 3090, and we still don't know for sure. But again, I don't want to get into this whole restating everything I've said a million times. You can watch my previous RDNA 2 videos. That's pretty much what I think. It's called Navi 2X. They're going to double compute units to the 5700 XT, increase IPC, increase clock speeds, over double the bandwidth. And that means it should be, I would hope if things go well, at least 90% better than a 5700 XT. And if it is, it's around a 3080. That's just what that math means. That's how that works. And if it's not, something went wrong. So is AMD game over? All AMD reps I've talked to have said that they expect it to be around the 3080. That hasn't changed. All that's changed is Nvidia's calling it double the cores we expected them to. That doesn't change the performance. The performance is exactly what we expected. Although we still don't know ray tracing, which is what I'm most interested in, to be honest. Let me see. I saw 2 tips pop up. Where's the yellow one? QF goes, why so concerned about 2 8-pin power draw? Recall the 295X2 had 2 8-pins for 288 watts plus. Oh, it was more than 288 watts. The 295X2 used around 500 watts with just 2 8-pins. I'm not saying that 2 8-pins can't work. I'm just saying I would prefer the 12-pin because it would be a better connection. I don't, I know these cards can use a ton of energy, so why not use 3 8-pins so you can overclock it and get to like absurd levels of performance? Because I really think the 3090 could be an 8K gaming card, especially if you overclock it. I don't think that's bullshit, So that's the concern, is just I feel like 8 pins is skimping it for no reason, But it is what it is. If you put it in 2 separate connectors for the 8 pins in the power supply, it should be fine, assuming it's a high quality power supply. If RDNA 2 is competitive, they drop 3090 20 gigabyte. Probably, yeah, that's what I think. This is from Harold Bureau. If RDNA 2 is a disappointment and AMD tries to go for low prices, Nvidia can release a cut down version. Maybe, or they'll just launch, it does seem to me that the 3070 actually is missing a couple SMs. There's no reason they can't launch a 3070 with GDR6X instead of GDR6 with 16 gigabytes and, price that sucker at like 700 or something. There's no reason they can't do that. That could be the response if AMD just goes for bargain bin pricing, which again, I think the Navi 22 card could be I think it could legitimately be around a 3070, if not a little better, for like 450 or something. So I think AMD can compete here. Again, I don't think they're taking top performance. Why are these tips? Oh, there's the tips. Jesus, I swear they weren't popping up. All right, let me see. What do we got? i9 used PCIe 3.0 testing, not 4.0. No, guys, I can't get over this. Guys, PCIe 4.0 will be necessary to maximize 3090 performance, and I think 3080. Like, I don't know why there's this dispute. Like, Hardware Unboxed is switching to the 3950X for benchmarking Ampere. This is a done deal. Done deal. In recent games, the 5700 XT, I guess let me put this down as a timestamp because I still can't get over people still are doubting this at all. I mean, no offense. It really does surprise me. Like, already in like Horizon Zero Dawn, there's notable performance losses with a 5700 XT, right? The 3080 is going to be about double 5700 XT. Not really double 2080, but double 5700 XT. You don't think there could be like a 10% or more performance loss in some games? No, not all games. Some games there won't be, but there will be some games. And when you're buying a $700 graphics card, why would you not get a modern motherboard? I just don't get it. I don't get it. You know, and it's fine. You know, there's always a bottleneck in your system. There's always a bottleneck in your system. So if you have like let's say an 8700K build and you don't want to buy anything now, like maybe you just want to wait for Zen 4, that's fine. But yeah, there's going to be some games where you lose 10% performance, but $700 3080 is pretty goddamn powerful. So it's just up to you. But when you ask me a blanket question, if you want me to answer it in a yes or no format, will PCIe 3.0 bottleneck the 3080? Yes or no answer is yes, it will. It will bottleneck it. There's always a bottleneck. Yes, it will. Intel is a waste of time now. I don't know how many times we need to say this, guys. Like, it's horrible. It's 14 nanometer, pulling 200 watts without PCIe 4.0. I don't know why people are buying Intel. I keep telling you I don't get it. But do whatever you want to do. I don't know. I care more about numbers now. I barely play games. Yeah, I know what you mean being a tech tuber. I swear to God, sometimes that's how it feels like. Evil bread. Clinton Shaw. After hearing you say that Nvidia is going to have to settle for Samsung, yeah, I mean, because they need the capacity, you know, and they're cheaper. They're cheaper. They got to keep the revenue going up, you know, the profit margins up to justify their stock price. It makes sense why Nvidia would be trying to buy ARM. Yeah, I've heard mixed talks though about if they'll actually be able to do that. I guess we'll see, you know. All right, let me see here. What do we got? Oh, I already answered that question. Robert Gems writes in Gims. Tom, 3080 versus 2080 sounds amazing. Hey, I'm impressed. I agree. But what about 3080 versus 1080 Ti? 3.5 years later, same price, plus 75 watts on a much smaller node. So here's my answer. Yes, the 3080 uses like 40% more energy or something, maybe 30%, 30% more energy than the 1080 Ti, and it's only about 80% better performance or something. My answer to you is that's rasterization. Do we really need more than around double a 1080 Ti's rasterization performance for almost anything? I guess 8K 120, but those monitors don't exist. So why is it using so much more energy? Well, because they're using a cheap node. Maybe smaller, but it's not as good as if it was TSMC. That's number one. But number two, the ray tracing will be over twice as good, guys. That's why. So if your question is this bad? It's like, well, we can't say for sure until we see the ray tracing performance. But again, my same sources, the same ones that mentioned NVCache, the same ones that mentioned 50 to 70% better performance, the same ones that eventually mentioned these things are using a ton of energy, and it's clearly on Samsung, also said ray tracing performance that's wildly better, over twice as good. So yes, it uses more energy with like almost more than a full node shrink. Yes, it costs the same almost 4 years later, but I think that its performance per watt for ray tracing is going to be over double. you know, like way better. So, and once you're getting to the ability, like again, I keep saying this, I have a Radeon 7. If I play games in high settings, there's almost no game I can't do 4K 120. Most of my games I can do 4K 120 and a mix of ultra, you know. There's games like Metro Exodus where it's more like 1800p on high or something, but that's still pretty damn good for a 2-year-old, you know, early 7 nanometer card. Like that's pretty with a die size half the size of the 3080 Ti, no 3090. By the way, guys, like okay, so this should double my performance that I'm already somewhat able to do 4K 120. That means 4K 120 is done. We can easily do it with Ampere. So after that, ray tracing is the next thing, you know. So that's what NVIDIA is focusing on too. I think every gen from now on, you're going to get increased rasterization performance. But I think we're almost to the point where you don't need that much more for a very long time, honestly. I mean, you're going to want that 30% increase every year just to kind of keep up. But, you know. All right. Let me see what else we got. Andy McKay says, Jensen said that GDR6X transmits twice the data as GDR6. Worried 10 gigabytes isn't enough for next gen. Well, depending on how well tensor memory compression works, which I covered, it seems like that 10 gigabytes is kind of the equivalent of a Turing card with like 12 gigabytes. So that should make you feel a little better. But at the same time, it's like, I think NVIDIA had a choice. Do they want to launch an $800 card with 20 gigabytes? Or do they want to launch a $700 card with 10 gigabytes and then wait to see if they need to launch the 20 gigabyte? That's what I think is going on, you know? And so, you know, should you be worried about it? I don't know. Wait for the benchmarks, which is, that's something I forgot to say in the beginning. I do kind of think you wait for the benchmarks. Like, look, if you're desperate for a new card, if you're using a GTX 980 and 4K and you're like, please, I waited so long. Sure. Try to get the 3080 or 3090 if you have the money to burn. But if you're fence sitting, I do recommend waiting for benchmarks and at least a decent indication of RDNA too. Because, you know, there's more competition coming, and we will want to know if that 10 gigabytes is a problem. I mean, let's just be honest. We want to know, you know, and I really do think if NVIDIA wanted to just, you know, shut up and take my money, everybody, which I think they almost did. But if they really wanted to, they should have just gone with 20 gigabytes or something. But, you know, I think they didn't think they needed to. And it seems like how everyone's blown away, they probably didn't need to either. All right. I'm sure I missed some questions. Let me see here. So I have an EVGA 650 watt. The 3080 recommendation is 750. With an updated PSU calculator says I could pull it off. Do you think so too? Yeah. Look, guys, I think the 3080 is going to use as much energy as an overclocked Titan RTX. 650 watts is fine for a 3080. I do recommend the 3090 be used with really powerful power supplies. Having said that, you could probably get by with a 3090 and a 650 watt as long as you don't have a super power hungry CPU and you're not overclocking. But, you know, I just recommend the 3080. If you're someone who has a 650 watt, I don't know, is it small form factor? Is that why you have a 650 watt? Your case is, and your budget's probably more around the 3080 anyways. Jesus. Stuttering all over the place. That's something too. Let me put a timestamp here. What do we have? 48 minutes. Let's put 48, 30. B Doodle says availability. Again, I kind of said it in the beginning, but let me emphasize this very clearly. I believe the 3090 will have a fourth the availability, at least at the most, of the 2080 Ti. That's not a lot. And I think the 3080 will be about, I don't know, a lot more than that. I think there's a reason you're seeing NVIDIA show release dates, and Digital Foundry had a 3080, not a 3090. That's because the 3090 is going to be basically a paper launch for a while. I think you'll be able to buy it. They will be some people who go on Reddit and say, oh, I got a 3090. It's not, but I'm just saying availability is going to be tight. So I would recommend the 3080 is probably what you should hope for. And, you know, because the 3090 is not going to be easy to get. I think that answers your question, B Doodle. YouTube's doing a horrible job of organizing questions. I apologize, guys. Any idea if Nvidia has plans to give their cards the AI upscaling the Nvidia Shield uses? Would love to upscale the YouTube videos I watch on my PC. I can't comment, right? I would assume it's going to get something like that. I really can't comment, Hector. Johannes T says, probably Johannes says, do AMD have something against the IO on cards? Well, I mean, so let me put this down as a timestamp, right? I mean, let's be honest, guys. What Nvidia showed with the IO RTX reminds me a lot of what the PS5 is doing, except, of course, the difference would be the PS5 directly bypasses the GPU. It's able to have the CPU, the RAM, the storage, and the GPU all communicate with each other separately in their own data paths. So the PS5 has its own advantages there. And dedicated co-processors. Like, we don't know, I know Nvidia says it's like 24 cores of, decompression in a tensor cores. I don't doubt that. That's probably true. But is that 24 cores while also running DLSS and ray tracing? Is it? Because these tensor cores are going to get bogged down if you're trying to stream in assets and do that. There's got to be some limitation somewhere. So it's not the same. But what we know, and there will be differences, it's hard to say. But the PS5 does something really similar, we already know, to what Nvidia did. And guess what? PS5 is AMD, and there's also similar stuff in the Xbox Series X. It works differently, and it's, not as powerful in terms of IO, but it has something similar. So AMD has something, coming with RDNA too. At least they'd be idiots. Like, again, this is what I keep saying about RDNA too. Like, if it doesn't have some type of enhanced high bandwidth cache 3.0, if it doesn't have the efficiency we saw in the Xbox Series X, presentation at Hot Chips, that just means AMD released worse cards than the consoles for some reason. So we don't know if the consoles have things that AMD didn't put in their final desktop cards technically, but what we've seen is that AMD should be able to do that, All right, let's see. Opsec Clyde says, people are worried that Intel doesn't have a PCIe 4.0 yet. Do you have any more info on Zen 3 release and if it will beat the i9 10900K in gaming? I mean, I think it will. Yeah, that's my simple answer. I think it will beat the Comet Lake in gaming. And then, Rocket Lake will come out with half the cores using double the energy of Zen 3 and look pathetic. That's honestly what I think is going to happen with Zen 3. Zen 3 is going to be 20% better than Zen 2, guys. Where does that put you? Above Comet Lake. So at the very least the same, and it'll have PCIe 4.0. And with that in mind, then, guys, yeah, Zen 3. Zen 3, Zen 3, Zen 3, Zen 3. I would not buy Intel for gaming anymore. I just wouldn't. I don't think I'm a fanboy for saying that. This is like when people started to desperately justify Bulldozer. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. Intel's better now. Once we got to Haswell, it was like, I don't know what to tell you. Just don't buy AMD for gaming unless you're saving money somehow or something, or you need a special feature that only AMD has for some reason. Like, there's nothing to say. Don't buy Intel. Like, we're done. Intel's out. Tell Alder Lake. Out. PCIe 4.0 is the nail in the coffin for sure. Well, it's one of the nails. How many nails are in that coffin so far? Pretty sure if this was a coffin for Intel, right, it would just be a coffin with a bunch of lazily hidden nails all over the coffin. Like they ran out of space to put more nails in the coffin. That's what's going on with Intel right now. I just would not touch it. Miguel Perez says, do you think we can see 2080 Ti performance for $300? I don't think so. No, I don't think that cheap. What you have to remember is, like, why is the 3070 stronger than a 2080 Ti? Probably slightly, by the way, but slightly stronger than a 2080 Ti, as I confirmed over a week ago, by the way, in a tweet, for $500, because the consoles are going to be $500. And if you can't get a graphics card that's stronger than the consoles for $500, I mean, they need to have that. So I think what you're going to get from AMD is something stronger than the 3070. And if it's a lot stronger, probably won't be. Or you're going to have something around 3070 performance for probably $400 again. Like, I think Navi 22 is basically what will replace the segments of the 5700 XT. And what you're going to get is a 256-bit card with GDR6X, or maybe even just 16 or 18 gigabit per second GDR6. I don't know, right, if they need GDR6X there. And that'll give you bandwidth pretty close to a 2080 Ti. You know, I think it's going to be 56 or 60 compute units at about 2 gigahertz. That's quite a bit better than a 5700 XT. That should put it right around the 2080 Ti. And, you know, with the matured yields, the die size will be bigger than a 5700 XT, but not giantly bigger. It could still be around the size of a Radeon 7 or smaller. Radeon 7's die size is pretty small, by the way, relatively speaking. So there's no reason AMD can't launch something that competes with the 3070 for like $400 again, maybe $450. And then if they really want to go, you know, what I really hope they do is give it 16 gigabytes. It'd be cool if it was a 256-bit card with 16 gigabytes of GDR6X, and then the cut down version at 8 gigabytes for like 350. Like that, like 350 and 500 that's what I would do if I was AMD. And so for 300, I don't think so. You know, I think the 3060 is going to be an 8 gigabyte cut down 3070 for 400, and that'll be around a 2080 Super, maybe even a little better for $400. So there's their console killer, right? That's what the 3060 will be, their console killer graphics card. It'll really be about the same thing for about the same price as an entire console. But, you know, that you need to have that product. So when people sit there and go, I'm thinking about getting a PS5 or just getting a new graphics card, they maybe get the graphics card. And that's what the 3060 and 3070 are for. And again, Nvidia would not be doing this unless there was competition, I don't think. I think they'd have a $450 3060 and a $600 3070 if there wasn't competition coming. All right, I rambled on and on with that question. Let me see here. What else do we got for questions? Okay. Hi, Ren. Hi, Tom. What's your guess when the 3000 series will come to mobile? I travel a lot, and I'm looking forward to an upgrade to a 3070 and a laptop. I'll put that down as a timestamp. It's a good question. You know, what we want to put RTX 3000 mobile. So, I mean, it uses more energy, but again, my understanding is that like Samsung's yields are way more over the place, right? Because remember, if you, let's say you have 80% yields, I don't know, you know, the exact number, but let's say it's 80% yields. That doesn't mean 80% good samples. That just means 80% without hardware, like, you know, defects that require you to disable part of the hardware. What that really means, though, is still about half of those you need to disable part of it. Otherwise, they'll use way too much energy. And so I think they're going to take their best yields and give them the Quadro, their second best to give them the laptop. So I think the 3070 is going to use around 200 watts. So, you know, I think even the best yields of that are going to go in desktop replacements. So sure, I think you'll see 3070 performance, but probably underclocked in laptops. I think you'll get 3060s in there, but I think it's going to be mostly 3050s for what you, right? So when you're thinking of a laptop that has like a 2070 or a 3060 Max Q, I think those will probably have Ampere 3050s. Having said that, the Ampere 3050s will probably be as good as like a 2070 anyways, or better. So with way better ray tracing. So that's kind of what I think, but we don't really know yet, right? And when I talk to people in the supply chain who are buying these for laptops, like OEMs, they don't think they're going to have any Ampere laptops until early next year. So I guess that's something you probably wanted to know the most. But I'm not 100% sure. That's just what I know. All right. I know, God, YouTube could really do a better job of not jumping all over the place with questions. Doc, I'm getting to as many as I can here. Doc Cube writes in, when do you think the pre-orders will be up? Oh, I mean, I think within a week, within a couple weeks. I mean, I know, I mean, I've told you guys the release date, mid-September, and I think that's a real, I thought it was a real release date. I don't know. Seeing this unveiling that seems a little sketchy in some of the details, I wonder if it will be just a paper launch at first. But I mean, I think you'll be able to pre-order by within 2 weeks, you know. Fix Kiminakun Fix, thank you for the tip. You never question, it seems. Another tip there. Tristan says, currently running a GTX 1080 on a B450. Will I severely bottleneck myself by running RTX 2080? Well, the RTX 2080 only has PCIe 3.0, so no. Love your content. Thank you, Tristan. But let's assume you mean 3080. Severely bottleneck? No. Again, guys, here's the answer. Do you need PCIe 4.0 for high-end Ampere? The short answer is, will it bottleneck high-end Ampere? The short answer is yes, it will. Will you be severely bottlenecked in most games? Probably not. Most games will probably be less than a 5% difference. Some games will be 10 to 20%. As time goes on, more games are going to be built with PCIe 4.0 in mind, though. You know, if you look at games going to PCIe 2.0 now, a lot of high-end cards are severely bottlenecked in some games, like more than double-digit performance losses. So over time, it's going to get worse. But out of the gate, are you going to be severely bottlenecked in most games? No, I don't think you will. But there will be performance losses. These are really powerful cards. NVIDIA is going all out. Freedom rings. Hey, I'm late here, but I'm confused on the title of the vid. What does Samsung have to do with NVIDIA? Well, it's the node they're using, and it's a disadvantage versus TSMC. I'll have timestamps too once this is done, where you can go back and I answer these things directly, guys. Piffed Suck says, you will need Threadripper to avoid bandwidth limiting 23090s and SLI. I mean, I've heard NVIDIA is pushing Threadripper for testing of a lot of the high-end Amperes, guys. I think it's mostly for Quadro testing, of course, but that's what I've heard, is that they want people using Threadripper test systems for RTX 3090 testing. That tells you how powerful these are, how much oomph you need to maximize performance with these graphics cards. Okay, I think I'm caught up on... Okay, Moondust Lisa says, for the people who just can't afford the new cards, should people now be snapping up the 2080 Ti's? God, no. And by the way, people pointed this out on my Discord, and it was hilarious. They pointed out that already you can find 2080 Ti's for like $800 on eBay. Like, actually, let me put a timestamp to this, because this is something a lot of people are probably wondering. 2080 Ti on eBay. You know, you guys were warned. I said, sell your 2080 Ti like a month ago. I kept saying it over and over. They were selling for $1,200 or so a month ago. Now they're already $800. Guys. The 3070 is stronger than a 2080 Ti. It uses less energy and will probably have over double the ray tracing performance. That is $500. What do you think a 2080 Ti is worth? It's used. $300 tops is what I would pay for a 2080 Ti right now. $300 tops, because the 3070 is stronger, uses less energy, has better ray tracing, PCIe 4.0, new features, RTX I. Why would you get a 2080 Ti for anything way less than a 3070? Easy answer. Respond to someone in the Discord there. Sorry. So no, I don't think you should. I think the 2080 Ti is I'm sorry. Let me back up. I saw that Turing is getting RTX I. So before you guys all jump down my throat, I saw that. And I have a link in the description actually linking to NVIDIA confirming that in the comments section. So I apologize. It will have RTX I, and it will have some features like some version of DLSS. I don't know how much of DLSS 3.0 it can get. I somewhat suspect they'll actually give the full new DLSS to Turing. But so anyways, is the 2080 Ti the worst purchase used? Not if it's $300, but I'd rather have a 3060 than a 2080 Ti. Why would I not? Way less energy, better ray tracing, half the power usage probably. No, I don't want a 2080 Ti. It's done, guys. No, sell them as quick as you can. That's my answer. Let's see. Ike's writes in from the Discord. Ike says, is this going to be the spark that changes reviewers from Intel to AMD? Yes. I expect to see a lot of AMD systems. You're probably going to see both too. I suspect Hardware Unboxed will at least do some testing of both, right? Because let's be honest, people will want to know how their Intel system does with Ampere. Yeah, but I think you're going to see the switch to AMD systems for testing, especially when Zen 3 comes out. This is it. Again, the nail in the coffin of Intel for a 1 year is done. The coffin's covered in nails. It's hard to even pick up the coffin and bury it anymore because they've nailed so many nails into the Intel coffin. It's done, guys. Oh, and to those talking about how much you guys think a 5700 XT will be worth used. Yeah, it's going to lose value, but it's not going to lose as much. Like the 2080 Ti just lost 33% of its value like that today. Eventually it'll be worth 50% less. That's $600. That's a new monitor. That's a console and a cheap monitor right there. Eventually, I think used 2080 Ti's, well, who knows? Because NVIDIA cards command a price for no reason over time. But like you could see 2080 Ti's selling for less than 500. You know, you lost $700 in like a week there, you know? And so will the 5700 XT also lose value? Well, yes, but it might now be worth 150 on eBay. So maybe you lost 200, not 700, you know, and I don't think Vegas are going to be worth that much less. How you can't get that much cheaper. I think Vegas are just going to stay at like 150 or one, you know, forever or whatever. I don't see. Oh, Avengers typing. I know he has a question there. All right, let me make sure. So Famicom, isn't the RT performance NVIDIA claimed about 3000 actually just on their proprietary RTX? I don't know. Again, I say this earlier in this live stream. I find the RTX claims and benchmarks today weird and inconsistent. Like you would think they would lead with that, but my suspicion is they're still getting it fully working because there's something going on with how impressive it is. If you looked at the numbers Jensen talked about, it looked like it should be at least double the ray tracing performance per clock per Cuda Core or whatever, per SM, I guess you would say. And so I think that's what's going on. But yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of say wait for benchmarks, Famicom. Yeah, it's just weird they show Battlefield 5 without ray tracing on. Kevin Jr., you're talking down on Intel, but during NVIDIA's reveal today, they used the 10900K. And on NVIDIA's website, it states that i9s are recommended. I don't know. I know all I can say is this. I know the 5700 XT has notable performance losses in like Horizon already, you know, from PCIe 3.0. So if NVIDIA is saying you need an i9, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe they don't need to use as much PCIe bandwidth. Who knows? But I find that somewhat unlikely. I find that unlikely, guys, especially for like RTX IO. So let's get this straight. They're going to run these super high frame rates, massive frame buffers, and then they're also going to move assets around between RAM and multiple storage devices. That uses a lot of PCIe bandwidth. I'm not buying it. You know, not buying it. I'm just going to say I'm not buying it. I think you need something pretty powerful. Omega Mark, how much percentage 3090 over 2080 Ti? See, that was interesting because they didn't show the 3090 on the chart. All I can say is this. 3090 has like 20% more CUDA cores. 3090 has like 20% more bandwidth. So, you know, what can you say? All you can say is it should be at least 15% better. And with that in mind, right, let's just say the 3080 is, I think this is fair. Let's just say it's 28% better or something than 2080 Ti. So let's multiply that by even just 1.15. Yeah, that means like worst case scenario, I think 3090, 45 to 50% plus better than a 2080 Ti. I mean, yeah. And I think you're going to have overclocked models easily 50% better than the Titan RTX. I've been saying this idea that NVIDIA is about to launch something only like 20 to 30% better than Turing with the specs we were seeing was ridiculous, in my opinion. Preposterous. 0FN, is the 3080 with a 9700K good for a 360 hertz display, or should I upgrade my CPU? Again, there's always something better. For now, you're probably fine. But eventually, I think, you know, a Zen 3 CPU is better, but there's always something better. Until we see final benchmarks, guys, you can't take some of this stuff as gospel. But I'm just being honest. You know, there's going to be games that use PCIe 4.0. There's definitely already games that use more than 8 threads. Your 9700K should be fine this fall, but it isn't. 360 hertz is a tall order, man. It isn't, you know, the best. It's not the best around, and 360 hertz is pushing the limits. So that's really all I can say. Not to mention, so many games can't even run above 200 hertz. All right, let's see. I think all right, let's see. M5 Nut says, I have a 6850K at 4.4 gigahertz and it doesn't bottleneck my 1080 Ti. Okay. Looking at the 3080 and maybe a 3090. Will my CPU be a huge bottleneck? 6850K. Isn't that the 6-core version? 6850K Intel. What? Yeah, 6-core. All the more useful things I could remember. But I guess this is why this is my job, because I just remember that's an old Broadwell 6-core. Will it be a huge bottleneck? I mean, again, what do you... It's funny how we keep coming back to this question. What do you consider a huge bottleneck? 10%? 20%? I don't know. I would say that's not a huge bottleneck. But then again, isn't that also the difference between a $1,500 3090 and a $700 3080, 10 to 20%? Maybe it is a huge bottleneck when you consider it would have just been cheaper for you to buy a new CPU, a new motherboard, than to get a 3090, right? Like that's like 10 to 20% performance differences. That's what that means in some games, guys. You know, unless you have a top of the line system, I recommend the 3080. I'm going to keep saying that, you know, just because there will be some games where you leave performance on the table. The 3090 is pushing it. So unless you have a top of the line system, I kind of just recommend the 3080. But there's going to be plenty of games where you're fine with that CPU. It just depends. You're going to have to look at benchmarks of the actual games you play when it comes out. But again, will there be bottlenecks? The short answer is yes. This thing is really powerful. There's always a bottleneck in your PC, though. You have to decide if it's worth it. Remster says, do you think we'll see a 3080 Ti? Gun to my head, no. I think more likely they would launch a 20 gigabyte 3080 or a 12 gigabyte 3090. That's what I think their 3080 Ti would be. Just launching a 12 gigabyte 3090 for like, you know, $1,000 to cut off big Navi. Like, I think that's way more likely than a 3080 Ti. Because, and I mean, especially the 3080 Ti just seems unnecessary. Missed my question on Navi 2X Zen 3 N7. I'm trying to get to them as fast as I can. YouTube's kind of deleting them pretty quickly today. There's a lot of viewers. I need to turn down the live chat for the next stream. That's for sure. But yeah, Stuart, I don't know what to say about, I don't know what your Navi 2X question was, right? Like, Navi 2X will be powerful. I think easily they'll compete with the 3070, probably the 3080. Zen 3 will probably be the best gaming CPU this fall. Definitely on the best mainstream platform. N7, N7P, N7 Plus. I mean, I think, you know, what is it? They're going to use 7 nanometer. That's a big question. Will they use 7 nanometer EUV on the biggest Navi? I'm not entirely sure, I guess. But they'll be using a better node than what Nvidia has access to, and certainly better than what Intel is using. Thomas Stoborough says, prices are amazing for the first time in like forever. Well, it's because there's competition, man. I'm unsure about the 10 gigabytes of VRAM on the 3080. A lot of people asking that today. You know, all I can say is that, you know, the 10 gigabytes on the 3080 is probably enough now, depending on if they really have tensor memory compression and it really boosts, you know, how much RAM you take up, and how well they can swap files with RTX IO. Like, I think 10 gigabytes is enough for now, but yeah, you know, they wanted to sell for 700. That's why it has only 10 gigabytes. You know, I don't know. We're just going to have to see. I think for sure there's going to be always some settings you can turn down to not max out the VRAM usage, but it's a bit small for how powerful these cards are. There's no way around it. Do you think they'll use the 3090 as the main GPU for GeForce now? Yeah, probably 12 gigabyte versions. That's what they did with the 2080. They basically used 2080 Ti Supers for the what is it for GeForce Now or whatever for a while there, right? They were using 12 gigabyte overclocked 2080 Ti's. They just never gave them to consumers. A lot of the reasons I think they never gave that to consumers is they wanted these things to look way stronger than a 2080 Ti. Mike Farino says you keep missing a bunch of super chats. I'm getting to them as quickly as I can. YouTube is deleting these questions as they come for some reason. I'm gonna have to turn down the chat. That's why I don't recommend spamming it, while there's a bunch of other questions. As good as ass. Sold my 2080 Ti a month ago for top dollars because of your video. Just wanted to say thank you. I'm still on the fence. It just depends, right? I lean towards the 3080 just because it uses a reasonable amount of energy. That's my honest answer. Let me make sure I'm not. Let's see. Oh, God. Yeah, a bunch of other questions just showed up. Endgame says, will the non-GDR6 on the 3070 be a problem? I think they're going to give it as much bandwidth as it needs. I wouldn't rule out, I guess, some 3070 Ti with GDR6X and that extra couple SMs enabled. I'll say that. But no, I think it's stronger than a 2080 Ti. That's what I was told it was the whole time, and it looks like it will be. So I think it's enough. And I'm pretty sure that GDR6 will overclock pretty well. I'm betting you can overclock that to like at least by 10-20%. So Juliet Walter says, I'm not that into gaming, but into your video editing motion design. Should I wait for Quadro Ampere or go direct 3090? If you can get a hold of a 3090 for professional work, that's what I'd probably get right now. You'll have to check what features you need in the software that Quadro would have, but I think the Quadros are going to be really hard to get a hold of for a while. Mike Farino says, it sucks that I'm stuck buying Nvidia again this gen because I have an ultra-wide G-Sync panel before Nvidia opened up the standard. Yeah, I don't know, Mike. I don't know what to say. I wanted to make sure my monitor had both FreeSync and G-Sync. I think I'm almost going to wrap this up, guys. I'm getting pretty tired already, if you can't tell. It's been a long week, and it's going to be a long day tomorrow. We got Z information, and I got to record the podcast with Dan. Probably going to have 1,000 reader mails. Ethereum crypto mining is hot at the moment. Crypto mining is hot relative to last year, but last year it was a waste of money. It's nowhere near what it was in 2017 and 2018, guys. Next up, 2016, 2060 supers. Yeah, I don't know. If you're going to mine, I think you'd want to wait for RDNA 2. And, well, AMD have something to compete against the BF GPU. Again, I think AMD is going to try to compete with the 3080, and I think they'll launch some 24 gigabyte version, probably with liquid cooling, that gets as close to the 3090 as they can. But I wouldn't assume AMD is going to be able to compete with the top card. I just wouldn't, NVIDIA. No, I've already said, When will I stop? Austin Porterfield says, when will you stop shilling, you shill? Oh, when an AMD stops sending me checks for thousands of dollars. Yeah, that's why I'm doing this live stream where I say NVIDIA is going to win. They're stronger than a lot of people expected. That's what I want to know is, who am I shilling, Austin, AMD or NVIDIA? Because I can never get it straight with you trolls that have no clue what you're talking about. Nico writes in, was Jensen teasing the new Titan by talking about future Halo technology and then talking about the beating the first 3 of Ampere series? I mean, I don't know, there's rumors of a 48 gigabyte Titan, and if it's $3,000, I would actually put it up there with Quadro pricing anyways. There could be the full enabled die with, what was it, 84 SMs and 48 gigabytes, but they'll charge an arm and a leg for it. People keep spamming RTX IO versus PS5 IO. I already commented on it, guys. But at the end of the day, we won't know any even loose comparisons until we get benchmarks from the cards, and then the PS5 comes out, and then that gets analyzed. There's never really going to be a way to analyze the IO difference directly anyways, though. Can current DLSS games be easily patched with AMD machine learning upscaling? The friendly medic. I mean, I think it's going to be their own implementation. I think when it comes to ray tracing in the drivers, it'll be easier to just patch support for AMD RDNA 2 cards. But when it comes to DLSS, I'm guessing AMD is just going to have their own technology they have to write in themselves. That's my guess. Austin, love your stuff. Just have to say it. Austin, you were joking before. Okay. I assumed you were joking, but you never know. And I think there was one Discord question here. Oh, someone says I need to clean the fan in my Discord. Yeah, you can see it from there, can't you? Yeah. Yeah, it gets cleaned like once every few months. Your question, though, Avenger22, about AV1 codecs and 120 FPS streams on YouTube. I don't know. I don't know about the streaming performance right now. Goblin Freak says, I'm worried that the graphs are all DLSS turned on. Maybe when Nvidia says double RTX 2080 performance, maybe that's what DLSS turned on. But there's no need to guess. Digital Foundry showed some demos, and it was like 70 to 80% better than a 2080 in games without DLSS. And what does that mean? Well, to about 25 to 30% better than the 2080 Ti, just like we expected the 3080 to be. So I think there's no way around it. The 3080 is 20 to 30% better than the 2080 Ti without DLSS, just like we thought. At least that's what all indications point to. But again, I do admit there's something a little weird about the marketing and stuff. Cellx in the Discord's talking about how Ampere is clearly a professional card for cheap, that they're also selling to gamers. I mean, yeah. Yes, and he also brings up the 3090. I was specifically told that a lot of developers were asking for basically a double VRAM version of the 2080 Ti, that they didn't, or even just a double VRAM version of the 2080 Super, that they don't need, that much performance. They just want a ton of VRAM for when they're developing games, and I think that's what the 3090 is for in many ways. Minion Lover says, do you think that Nvidia could make a mobile chip with ray tracing for a Switch 2 in the next 4 years? Yeah, and I've been saying, it's so funny that we're now getting rumors a Switch 2 could come out next year. I've been saying that they shouldn't launch a new Switch this year, that they should wait for next-gen technology so they can make a handheld that's not as strong as the next-gen consoles, but at least is about maybe a third as strong, but has an SSD and a decent processor so they can at least run the same games at a lower resolution. Something like a handheld version of the Xbox Series S. I think if Nintendo waits for like a 5 nanometer or 7 nanometer refresh of a mobile version of Ampere with an 8 core or something, that they can afford to give you something like next gen gaming in a handheld. It won't be as good as the next gen consoles, but it'll be close enough it can run all AAA games. And I think that's what it sounds like they might do. And I think that's the questions then. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get more GTX cards, guys. When do you think 4000 Threadripper will be announced? I think they'll tease it, right? But I don't think next gen Threadripper is coming out till early next year. That's my guess. I don't know for sure. I would tell you if I did, but I don't. I think next year, because we know Vermeer's coming out this year, probably in a couple, 2 to 3 months. I know a new Aegis update came out. I was told they just added Zen 3 support. So I think you're going to start seeing Zen 3 reviews in about, 2 months. And with that in mind, though, Threadripper usually would follow after. I think Threadripper is early next year, blocking off the launch of Ice Lake X. If Ice Lake X even ends up coming out, you never know with Intel. But who knows? We can be hopeful, right? Hope that Ice Lake X doesn't suck. Always hope. Lars says, any PS5 news? Not really. What is there to say? They're waiting for Xbox to announce frickin' anything worthwhile, and they're going to launch in November. And they're not going to, I don't think Sony's going to say anything until Xbox shows the rest of their hand. I think they feel like they're in the driver's seat at this point, and that Sony's going to wait for Microsoft to show their entire hand. It's ridiculous that we don't know the price yet, but You know, remember, I was told that they were considering doing some kind of an early pre-order without prices. That happened. So those sources seem to be correct about the things I said. It's just Sony's just lying in wait because they don't care anymore. Although I will be honest, if I was Sony, I would want to announce PS5 stuff next week because you'd want to do it right before Ampere reviews. I think I would. You know, now you know what Ampere will cost, at least, even if you don't know what the Xbox will cost for sure. So they should be able to make some guess. If I was Sony, I would do the full reveal with the remaining exclusives, price, and pre-orders next week. I would. Didn't say they will. Jordan Riff says, sorry if you answered, is an 80 plus gold 650 watt enough for the 3080? Yes, I already did answer that too, by the way. Ferenc Jacob says, when should we expect reviews to come out on the 3000 series? Told you, mid-September. Mid-September. I mean, and other people are saying the same thing. Mid-September, I think you'll get 3080 reviews, maybe 3090 reviews, but the 3090 will basically be a paper launch. Lucas Sloan says, just sold my 2080 Ti last week. Feeling pretty good. A bit sad I didn't sell it a few weeks earlier. I got $1,000. Oh, $1,000 each, so you sold two. Well, so think of it, man. You just sold two 2080 Ti's for $1,000 each. You can now afford to get two 3080s or a 3090 and a new monitor. You know, that's why you sell it. What do you think a 3090 would be good enough for my 4K 144 hertz monitor? Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. 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 The 3090 will be a 4K 120 hertz card through and through. It will be. Yep. All right, let's see if there's any last minute things I want to address from anyone in the Discord or... Okay. Just make sure there's any big questions I didn't miss here. Yeah, to the people in the Discord, remember that I live chatted with you the entire stream and a lot yesterday. So if you want access, I think I gave you guys a lot of chat. Lots of fanboys in the YouTube chat. Yeah, I wouldn't know. Let me make sure I didn't miss any last minute questions. I don't think so. I'm seeing these. Yeah, I think I got the last ones. I think I've finally caught up here. So I'll give it 5 more minutes and then I'm going to close the stream. We're not doing a full 2 hours today. It's too much, you know, and I'm exhausted. You know, I stayed up late doing research. It's been and I got to start preparing for the next thing. So let me give this 5 more minutes, just last minute questions or like look at the chat. And because I really don't have time to look at most of the live chat because I'm too busy talking and stuff. Yeah, 6,000 people watching. I think we got to like 7.7 thousand at one point though. And I don't want to start rambling, which I think I already am. The 9th dude writes in, whoa, bunch of tips. I had to stop the chat from scrolling. All right, few remaining questions then. The 9th dude on Discord, which again, you get access to if you support me on Patreon, says, I feel like AMD is going to be responding to this given how quiet they are. What does your gut tell you? Yes. I received a little bit of RDNA information today. So right on cue, by the way. So I feel like right now, AMD is going to start accidentally leaking stuff, you know, and I think they're going to start teasing things right around when Nvidia's reviews are coming out. And it's because, you know, I think they've been quiet for a reason. I've heard good things about RDNA too. I know people think it's a hot take to say that I think AMD is going to compete. But again, guys, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They're selling almost full 104 die for $500. They sold Turing for $800. They sold Pascal at launch for $700. Links in the description. Do you think they would sell 104 for $500 unless they thought they might need to? Come on. You know, AMD is going to have something. A real cost says, I'm a patron. How do I get into the Discord? You need to tip me, man, to ask that question. You, on Patreon, you log in your Discord account. You have to pair it, man. Google it. Just Google it. Don't tip me. Save yourself some money. Google it. Dominique Baldassari writes in, I really want to get 2 MSI or 2 Founders 3090s. I think the Founders versions of these cards look awesome, by the way. And NVLink. Advice, I don't know if the 3080 is NVLink. Maybe I'm an idiot for saying that, but advice on how to get my hands on them. Thoughts on SLI on 3090s? I mean, you know, NVIDIA seems to remain, I guess let me put this as a timestamp. This is an important question. SLI. NVIDIA insists, it seems, supporting SLI with at least 2 cards for the very top ones for the foreseeable future, it seems like. And I think that's a good decision. If I was NVIDIA, I would want the people who have, you know, just mega rigs to continue to buy dual NVIDIA cards so they can show them off. And they can afford to write the drivers for SLI for the very top die. It's just infeasible for them to support SLI down to, you know, like GT 1030s. It's just not worth the money. How many people are going to buy 4 GT 1030s and SLI them or something stupid like that? So, you know, in terms of advice, I don't have any advice. What I know is if you get 13090, you're probably going to max out every game at every resolution anyways. And if you get 2, I bet it would work because I don't think NVIDIA would support SLI unless it worked. Having said that, there's always some problems. And so I don't openly recommend SLI. I just don't, you know. The hope is eventually DX12 will use it well. But we'll see. I just saw, now there's been a million more questions. I'll get to them quick. Let me see. Chip there. Cuda Core is way higher than leaks. Well, it's the same SM count, dude. And Asus just did a press release with the Cuda Cores that were leaked. So I'm a little confused about what's going on with that. You know, and remember, my initial source didn't know Cuda Core count. He just knew performance and VRAM. That's it. Difference between 3080 all-in-one and Founders Edition. One's liquid cooled. Next question. Did you breathe a sense of relief when they announced the 3090 after the other 2 cards, Tom? No, I knew there was going to be a 3090. The sense of relief was the RTX I because that told me my initial source was definitely legit then. You've already said this, but it's funny that NVIDIA lowered their own prices because of what RDNA 2 can be. Well, that's what happens. My Navi Hope has left the chat. Oh, the hope. I wouldn't lose the hope yet. You should just be hoping for everyone to do well, though. Albert Zhang says, what would you recommend for Microsoft Flight Simulator at 4K Ultra settings? Is a 3080 enough? I don't play Flight Simulator, dude, so I can't really comment. But from what I've read, it's a hard-to-run game. The best you can afford, I recommend the 3080 for most people. It's like 80% of the performance, at least, I think, of the 3090, while using a reasonable amount of energy and costing less than half as much. That's the answer for almost everyone, is get the 3080. On eBay in Germany, 2080 Ti's are already going for €550. Yeah. There's going to be a flood. There's going to be a flood. I can't believe people doubted. It was so weird to see some NVIDIA fanboys argue that Ampere was going to be crushing AMD, but yet they didn't need to sell their 2080 Ti. It's like, which one's true, man? It can't be both. Why no entry level? So I guess I'll put a timestamp for that. Said I was going to get off. Low End Ampere. Why no entry level? Simple. They're launching GA102 and GA104 right now. Eventually, I think the 3060 will be out by Thanksgiving, as I said in my last video, but it has to do with Turing stock. You're going to see massive Turing price drops or stock drying up. And so they're kind of letting that fill up the price of low-end Ampere, right? Like if a 2080 becomes $400, you know, or a 2070 becomes $300, you know, even just in the used market, even if you flood the used market, NVIDIA is letting the flood of Turings kind of sell out in the low end before they launch their lower end cards, right? So that's why no talk. But yeah, you're going to get a $400 or something 3060. That's 80% as good as that's like a 2080 Super with better ray tracing. You'll probably get I'm guessing, $250 3050 or something like that. maybe 280 or 300. I know you'll get mad at 3050 is now that expensive, but it's probably going to be like full GA 106 or close. And with that in mind, well, that's not too bad, is it? That's not too bad. That's something that should probably be around a 2070 with better ray tracing for 250 or something. So that's what you can expect, but I don't think low-end Ampere is coming till early next year. I think you'll see a 3060 by Thanksgiving, and they're just going to let Turing discounts fill the low end for now. And pretty much the same with AMD, by the way. Do you see riser cards dead? Oh. No, you just got to put some thought into the case. Let me see. I think I got all those questions. Got them. All right, that's all the questions. I'll do one last check of the Discord. Okay. Well, I think that's it. One less scan. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Yep, that's about it, guys. Okay, that is going to do it for the live stream. I'm digging into much more about what this custom 8 nanometer node is. I want to know more about why they were going to clearly call it 7 nanometer and then just changed it to custom 8 nanometer at the last minute. Why did Asus just do an AIB press release where they said 5,248 cores for the 3090, half of what? There's something weird going on where maybe even the AIBs didn't know the real Cuda Core count. So, but that's going to take a lot more research. So that's why I wanted to get this live stream out. Remember to subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers, before the holidays. We're almost there, frankly. That would be incredible if we could hit 100K. Remember, if you support me on Patreon, you get early ad-free access to exclusive podcasts, Broken Silicon ad-free and early, the ability to ask questions and communicate on the Discord. Just remember, there's a Patreon there. Subscribe to that. You get a ton of features, guys. It's not like I just give you nothing. And it really is the Patreon supporters making this sustainable, because you never know what's going to happen with YouTube ads or any advertisers. And I really don't put a lot of ads in my videos. Like, how many VPN ads do you guys see is clogging me up my videos? None. So that's all I have to say left. This has been a crazy launch. It's funny how almost no one got everything correct. It seems like a lot of people got half of the stuff correct. I'm very excited that I got the NVCache and the performance metrics, and I think that's the important thing. I'm hoping to see that I got the ray tracing performance correct, but we'll just have to find out in another video. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.